So I'm going to start talking about the focus of today, which is your well-being. And I'm going to talk, and then Angela's going to talk straight after me, and then we're going to have sort of 10 minutes at around 10 o'clock to answer any questions, or if there are any comments you want to make then, okay? So today we're encouraging you to take some time to stop and reflect and kind of step away from the busyness of life. And we're going to be presenting different ways of thinking about your well-being, different strategies, and some may resonate more than others, and that's fine. Different things connect with different people and at different times. And there's a section for writing any notes at the back of your welcome pack. If you want to jot anything down, you want to find out more about something, then please do. And a reminder that I think parent carers often still need: self-care isn't selfish, and please do take time to think about your own well-being without guilt. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about our friend guilt a little bit later. And trying to hold a stance of treating yourself the way that you would a good friend. So one of the ways that well-being has been described, and I quite like the simplicity of this idea, is that well-being is like balancing a seesaw. And Dodge et al. Talk about stable well-being being when individuals have the psychological, social and physical resources they need to meet a challenge. And when individuals have more challenges than resources, the seesaw dips along with their well-being and vice versa. So if you have lots on your plate, and parent carers are often spinning lots of plates, you need to look more closely at how you're going to nurture yourself to regain that balance. And Angela's going to talk a little bit more about these kind of stress management in the moment, strategies that can help you. But what I love about working with mixing theory and the lived experience is the wisdom that you gain from parent carers who are living that life. And so I wanted to share a quote from a parent carer in my research. If you have a child with additional needs, your mental load is higher than a family who has a typically developing child. It's just that you worry more about more things and there's just more load. So then when other things happen, they have more of an impact. You have to allow a little bit of spare capacity for what you can tolerate. It's a bit like, you know you're going to get a tax bill, so you really should put some money or time aside each month, because if you wait till the end and you suddenly get a massive tax bill, you won't be prepared. So it's like I have to build into my time the possibility of things happening so that there's a buffer. And I really like this concept of having spare capacity, a buffer, a cushion. We don't wait until we're in crisis and then we start looking after ourselves. It's built into our day-to-day life. And that may be protecting some time for you. It may be saying no to things and demands on your time that aren't a priority. For example, requests for volunteering for Parent-Teacher Association events. That's my favourite one that I try and get out of. So it's thinking about how you can do that in your day-to-day life. So that's one way of thinking about well-being. But well-being is actually bigger than this. It's not just about coping and balancing out stressful events. We also want to grow and flourish and thrive rather than just survive. And that's a basic human motivation. And parents are allowed to do that. You don't have to become a selfless being as soon as you become a parent. And in my doctoral research, parent carers identified these different themes that help support their well-being. And I've called it the spectra. And I talk about this more in my book. I haven't got time to go into all of it now, but I'm going to focus on a couple of aspects. But I kind of hope that people can use this almost like a well-being health check. You can go down the list and think, okay, I'm doing all right in this. Perhaps I need a little bit more in this area. So the themes were having a sense of purpose and meaning, which I'm going to talk about more a bit later. Connecting with positive other people. Feeling empowered, so you know how to support yourself, where to go for support. Feeling more confident and competent. Your relationship with your child. having time that is yours, engaging in activities that replenish and recalibrate and kind of balance you, and emotional awareness. So the two areas that I'm going to focus on today is emotional awareness and having a sense of purpose and meaning, because these are key topics that underpin so much else to do with well-being. So regulating ourselves emotionally involves balance, again, awareness of our emotions, but also avoiding being overwhelmed by them. And naming emotions, even when they're difficult or complex, can help to manage them. And this is often called affect labelling. And what came up when I was talking to quite a lot of parent carers in my research and beyond is that we would have mixed feelings about things. So, for example, a parent would talk about the joy and pride in seeing their child achieve something, perhaps a delayed milestone or a milestone that they thought they would never achieve. And there was joy, pride, and sometimes also a sadness that it had been so hard to achieve. Sometimes seeing other children that just achieve it just like that can bring a kind of a sense of sadness. And I came across this lovely Greek word, and I've checked the pronunciation with Gina at the back, karmalipi, which means happiness and sadness intermingled. And this seemed to sum up some of these mixed emotions that parents were talking about. And Lisa Feldman Barrett is a neuroscientist who writes a lot about emotions. And she encourages us to be specific, so to go beyond big labels of how we're feeling. So rather than just, I'm sad or I feel angry, really trying to break it down what it is that you're feeling. So, for example, instead of I'm angry, it might be I'm worried I'm not going to be effective, or I feel disempowered when I'm not listened to. And there's something about this real specificity, she calls it a granularity, that can help the emotions become more manageable and less overwhelming. In fact, the scientist Leonard M. Lodinow talks about affect labelling being managing to calm anxiety, reducing the severity of PTSD, lowering high blood pressure, and other positive benefits. So becoming an emotion expert can be good for your well-being. Now, with the example of the child achieving something, there may be pride, there may be joy, there may be sadness. There can also be other feelings, resentment that other people hadn't helped more, or a kind of dejectedness or an exhaustion, knowing that this is a kind of level of input that you're going to have. And all those feelings are valid. But often what happens is we have those feelings and then we have other feelings about those feelings. And that's what I want to talk about next. So this is a really useful metaphor, a Buddhist parable of the second dart or the second arrow. So the first dart represents the inevitable difficulties that life throws at all of us. And we can't do anything about the first dart. Stressful events are part of life. But the second dart represents the thoughts and habits we get caught up in about the first dart. So these aren't always helpful. It's a secondary emotion or thought about the primary one. And it makes our distress last longer and is self-inflicted. So if I give you some examples, if you see your child really upset or struggling or perhaps having a kind of sensory overload, it hurts. It's painful to see your child struggle. And that's the first dart. The second dart may then start coming in with feelings of, I should know how to help my child, or my child hates me. It can also happen when we're feeling happy. So if you've gone out for a coffee with friends and you're laughing and having a good time, it can still come then. It may be, I shouldn't take time for myself, or if I relax, something bad might happen. So this kind of guilt, shame, often connected, negative bias to do with the second dart isn't always helpful. Now, it doesn't always work to try and get rid of it, but what you can do is notice it. You may even be able to name it. You can say, here's the second dart. And by observing it, you'll kind of distance yourself from it rather than accepting those thoughts as fact. And again, holding a stance of how would I respond to a good friend in the same situation? well, hopefully you wouldn't throw a second dart at them. So please don't do that to yourself either. And you might notice he's coming in when you're using the word should a lot, the tyranny of the shoulds. So I wanted to share a quote from Dr. Kristin Neff, who writes a lot about self-compassion and is also a caregiver, which I think always adds an extra layer of authenticity to her work. In a study on self-compassion in parents of autistic children, the researchers found that those parents with more self-compassion perceived less stress when dealing with their children. They were less likely to be depressed, more likely to be hopeful and satisfied with their lives. In fact, self-compassion was actually a stronger predictor of how they were doing than the severity of their child's autism. This suggests that what's more important than the intensity of the challenges you face is how you relate to yourself in the midst of it. So it's holding a stance of connecting with yourself with compassion and understanding, and not giving yourself a hard time for having a hard time. So just to kind of sum up, we're encouraging self-compassion for being human, recognizing that emotions are kind of, if you think of them as data, it's information, they're not good, they're not bad. We're noticing and naming without judgment. And there are other ways of dealing with difficult emotions. So I've just talked about noticing and naming. You can also reframe, which is sort of putting a different perspective on a feeling. And I love this quote from the Olympic diver Greg Louganis: "Fear is just excitement without the breathing." You can also have a different perspective if you're doing something that makes you nervous, public speaking, or going into a difficult meeting. You might start to notice your heart's pumping, you've got butterflies, and that can feel a bit overwhelming. But actually, if you stop and think, this is my body, creating adrenaline, which helps me get through a difficult situation, it becomes less of a threat. And one of the simplest ways of shifting your emotions is to move. And Lisa's going to do some mindful movement with us later to kind of show how you can use that kind of mind-body connection. But of course, sometimes we do get stuck in difficult emotions, and it may be helpful at times to reach out for psychological support. You can contact your GP. I signpost to emotional support on Affinity Hub, and you've heard from Lapis today about the services that they offer. So please don't feel you have to struggle on alone. Unfortunately, the risk of poorer mental health in parent carers is greater, and that's through no fault of our own. We're often juggling so much. So please don't struggle alone. Okay, so that's emotional awareness. And I would like to share another quote from a parent carer that really nicely ties together the kind of two themes that I want to talk about today. So this was a dad I was talking to, and we were talking about well-being, and he said, you have to reorientate to this new terrain. And I think a lot of people will relate to that idea that sometimes it feels like you've woken up in another world of special needs parenting that you didn't really know much about before, but still feel that life is heading in the right direction. And it is this reorienting process. I don't know if that kind of resonates with people. That really connected with me, this process of change. You have to become kind of familiar again with this new world. And research is showing that acknowledging mixed emotions that I've just been talking about, and that no life is all good, no life is all bad, it can make you more psychologically flexible and better at adapting at your current situation. But it is an ongoing process. There'll be steps forward and there are steps back. That's why I'd always talk about it's a process of accepting or adapting. It's a verb, it's an ongoing verb. And the expression that life is a verb is an ongoing process of change. So don't give yourself a hard time if difficult things still come up, even when your child's an adult. There will be still things that we have to reorientate to. But even though all this may be going on for us, we're dealing with change, we can still feel that life is heading in the right direction. And that's what I wanted to look at next. So having a sense of purpose and meaning in life is always shown in all the wellbeing studies to be beneficial. And it was definitely the case with participants, parent carers that I spoke to, that this was helpful. And Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist who wrote a lot about finding meaning. And he said the greatest task for any person is to find the meaning in his or her own life. So that's identify what really matters to us. I think it's really important though, because it can feel like quite a big abstract concept, that we initially try and focus on very small steps of living in line with your values. So for example, if one of your values that you hold really strongly, is really important to you, is justice, then you don't have to aim to set up a charity or do a national campaign and hand in a petition to number 10. It's great that people do that, but you don't have to aim that high. It can be small steps that will still feel manageable in your life, but you're still living in line with your values. So with that example, you may come across an online petition that you feel very strongly about. You sign it, you share it. There you go. It's manageable, but you're doing something that's really important to you. And we don't always have a current purpose in life, and it can change. And again, parents often talked about things that used to be important for them before kids isn't so important now, and they kind of shifted what their values were, often becoming kind of disability advocates or fighting for the right access to education or helping other parent carers. That was a really strong theme. But sometimes you might have lost touch with something that was important to you before kids. And I'd encourage you to kind of think again about connecting with those. What can you do to connect with those ideas now? And we can also have different values in different settings. So at work, it may be really important to you to be efficient or achieve things. And at home, your value may be warmth and fun or something like that. So different values in different places. And there are no right or wrong values. No one can choose this for you, and you can't really fake it, and they're personal to you. So I just wanted to encourage you to have a look through this list. There are hundreds of values, but I've just picked out some here. I hope you can all see that. And if you just want to, in your notes, maybe jot down if there are 2 or 3 that kind of really speak to you, whether it's kind of connection, love, adventure, fairness. What's really important in your life? And there are other things. It could be authenticity. Is it really important to you? Being genuine, being open. For some people, it's conformity. Rules and laws are really important. For other people, it's freedom, independence, self-awareness, being self-reflective. And then have a think about, are there ways you can break it down into really manageable steps? So for example, if adventure or exploring is really important to you, or travelling, obviously that can become quite difficult once you become a parent, but really think about what it was that you used to get out of travelling. So was it seeing somewhere new? So is that something you could do? Go on a day trip in this country to see something new, something different? Was it about eating different food or hearing different languages? Are there ways that you can try and build that into your life here and now? Okay, it's a lot to think about, but hopefully that's planted a seed. And in your welcome packs, there's more information on values and ACT, and we'll be sending some more information out in the Wellbeing booklet as well. So this relates to a Japanese concept of ikigai, which is a motivating force or something or someone that gives a person a sense of purpose or reason for living. And this model by Lieberman and Garcia, they break it down into doing what you love, so you have a passion, doing something that you're good at, because it does feel good to have a sense of mastery in knowing that you're good at something, you're competent, doing something that the world needs, so a purposeful contribution to something that's bigger than yourself, and something that you can be paid for. Now, often this is the sticking point for parent carers, because balancing work and caring can be very difficult, and parents become very creative and entrepreneurial about finding ways to do this. And I just want to get onto my soapbox just for a minute, and this is why services and charities and research that work in co-production ways with family carers, it's so important that payment is offered. I know it's not always taken by family carers, but it's really important that people are offered payment as a valuing of our expertise. We are experts by experience, and we have so much to contribute. So the thing with having a sense of purpose is that even when something is difficult, it feels more bearable if you are moving in the right direction. So if you're living in line with these values. So living a meaningful life, it doesn't mean that you're always going to feel happy, but the struggles along the way are more bearable. So if you think of someone who perhaps fitness or exercise is really important to them, and they sign up to run a marathon, there will be days on their training when they're getting up early in the morning and it's dark and cold and snowing on their face, where they will not be happy, but they are more likely to stick with it if it's a value that they've chosen and that's really important to them. And it's the same with any values. If we're living in line with them, actually some of the struggles along the way become more bearable. Okay, so well-being is bigger than just feeling happy. And one other final thing I want to just touch on is connection, and that's why we've called today Connecting with Yourself and Connecting with Others. So I've talked about this connection with yourself, so recognising your emotions, really understanding what your values are, but it's also so important to connect with others, and it's so lovely to see you all here today. We're a social species, we need to be connecting with other people. And the themes that came out from talking to parent carers of what was really important about other people, being positive other people, was a sense of understanding, so being with others who get it, non-judgmental, so realising we're all just doing our best, we're only human, a feeling of belonging, so finding your community, helping others and being helped, so a reciprocal relationship. We've all got something to bring and contribute, and there may also be times where we all need support, and that's okay, and that you're not alone. And on that note, I run a closed Facebook group called Parent Carer Wellbeing Affinity Hub. If any of you want to connect, I try and post on wellbeing. And I hope just having a group that's actually focused on parent carer wellbeing will remind people to take that into mind in their day-to-day life. I send out quarterly newsletters with information on services and research, so you can sign up on the website. And we're really looking forward to hearing from all of you in the discussion about what more would be helpful for you. What do you want more of? So please do share your views on how we can kind of carry on this journey. Okay, so just quickly summing up, well-being involves balance, and remember to give yourself a buffer. Don't wait for a crisis. Different things will help you at different times, and there are different ways to support your well-being. There's coping and kind of stress management. There's also growing and flourishing. Emotional awareness helps emotions become more manageable, particularly this specific naming of complex emotions. You can notice and observe the second R and remember that thoughts aren't facts. Don't give yourself a hard time for having a hard time, and treat yourself like you would a good friend. Connecting with yourself and with others can support your well-being if it's with the right people. And a meaningful life isn't always easy, but it's worth it, and so are you, and there's no need to feel guilty when you're considering your own well-being. Okay, thank you.